This is Greasefang, Okiba boss, and this is why I want my friends to hate it.
Just when my coil's reaching the green line.
Now that Kamigawa Neon Dynasty is finally out, and I have all the cards I wanted for this deck, I can finally build this one. So, Greasefang, Okiba boss, is a black, white, and 1 for a 4/3 rat pilage that totally isn't an homage to that one scene in Akira. At the beginning of combat on your turn, return target vehicle card from your graveyard to the battlefield, gains haste, return it to the owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. Now, I don't know if this is representative of Greasefang's pack being able to repair vehicles, or just that they're really reckless with them. Either way, it's an interesting bit of flavor. Now, vehicles are a relatively new concept to Magic. They came out in Kaladesh back in 2016. But they're really just extrapolations of things like Jade Statue, which have been in the game since the beginning, and all the other various cards that turn into creatures when you pay some mana for them. Except this time, you're tapping creatures to turn them into creatures instead of tapping mana. So because this is a vehicle-themed deck, I had to go pretty heavy on the vehicles. It's got 19 in it right now, which seems high, except that in one of my games I tried this deck out in, it was a mess. I lost a lot of stuff constantly to the point where Greasefang couldn't bring it back fast enough. As I got other cards to make them somewhat more resilient. The issue I have is that because you have to have other creatures to activate them, you have to clog up a lot of your deck with pilots, or things that are like pilots. And pilots is where I'm having a problem. In Kaladesh, the pilots were red-white. In this set, they're white-blue or white-black. And yet, you can't build a deck that takes full advantage of all that stuff because there's no white-blue-black commander to let you do that. And since I howied out we're going to get Chuck Yeager on a card to let us unify all this stuff, pilots are going to be an issue for vehicle-themed decks going on. In Magic, there are 13 cards that count as pilots, and Okiba Reckoner Raid, which turns into one. The problem is that of all those cards, 7 have blue or red in them, so we can't play them, and one of them is Oval Chase Daredevil, which doesn't actually really help the deck any. So, we've got Hotshot Mechanic, Gearshift Ace, KItsune Ace, Giant Ox, and Aeronaut Admiral. I know Giant Ox isn't a pilot. However, it's specifically designed to pilot vehicles with its butt. And I'm keeping it here for humor value. The other cards, SRAM, Oswald, and Low Shield, help us either get more cards or keep stuff on the table. Lupine Prototype I'm playing mostly for the humor value and the fact that it's a 2-casting us 5/5 Space Wolf that is utterly useless in almost every other situation. But plop him in the cockpit of a car and he's fine. Painseer, King Makar, and Order of White Clay all have untapped stuff. Painseer lets you draw cards, King Makar exiles creatures, and Order of White Clay helps bring back all the stuff that's going to get busted along the way. And in Kamigawa, we had the addition of artifact, equipment, creatures. So, Chainflail Centipede can crew a vehicle at 2/2, and then be reconfigured onto the front of it to get an extra +2 in attacks, and Lion Sash helps you pump up your guys as it slowly eats cards out of your opponent's graveyards. Now, the problem is, I have more vehicles than I have pilots. And we're already at, close to half the size of the deck. And if you're wondering about that half the deck math, here's the rest of the creatures I threw in. This brings us to a total of 54 creature or vehicle cards in the deck. We're getting a little out of the way here. Heliod might not be able to pilot anything until you meet his devotion, but he can still give stuff lifelink. Argivian Archaeologist lets you bring stuff back from the graveyard. And I've had an Archaeologist for the longest time. I rarely ever play him. My Guardian Beast is taking a break from my Prosper deck in the hopes that he'll stop people from stealing my car. Restoration Gearsmith simply brings stuff back. Metal Worker for mana, Scrapyard Recombiner to tutor for a couple things, and Kuldotha Forgemaster to also help tutor for a few things. The problem left over is that after I throw a bunch of mana rocks in here to make sure this deck doesn't just limp along slowly, I don't have a lot of room for reaction. I've got 3 more equipment in there because they help make my vehicles somewhat better. A Darksteel Forge to make sure they don't get smashed up too badly. A couple more tutors, spot removal, and a little bit of recursion. And that's it. I'm not sure what else to put in this deck. The issue with vehicles being that you need people to pilot the vehicles, and I either have to make a bunch of tokens to pilot them, and that's an some of those guys, you got a crew of 6, you have to really clown car an awful lot of 1/1 soldiers in there to get that thing moving. So I'm not sure what to do. I'm convinced the deck is not going to be a super hit. But the point isn't to make it a super hit, it's to build a deck that can survive my local meta using a commander that shouldn't. And I'm having a little trouble with that. A bit. I'm probably overlooking something, given it's the deck got 3 plays in the span of about 4 days, a little bit of editing. It's still not doing quite what I want, but it's there. I can feel it's there. I want to make it be there. So if you have anything as a suggestion, I will happily take it. Now, whether the deck gets off the ground or not, who knows? It might be an idea that just was doomed to failure. It might succeed for a bit. Only time will tell. You guys can throw me some suggestions. I'll be really happy. Probably take whatever you can give me, aside from things like, just abandon the deck, dumbass. Anyway, I will see you in the future with another commander my friends have decided to hate.